What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and it is another fun Thursday night with your favorite live tuning show. And Jim was asking some questions in the chat about TCS, but I don't know that you're going to be able to accomplish what you're wanting to do, Jim, without putting a two-step on. What up, Jerry? What up, Alex? Johnny, Shane, WS6, Scuba Sam. All the regulars are piling in. Good to see all your friendly faces. Hey, Jose. Remind me, Jose, before the show is over, and we will talk a little bit about neural networking. I don't have an interface up here, so I can't open up a tune with one on there, but I know you had asked for kind of an explanation on how it works, and we'll do that before the night's over. Hey, Danny. Hey, Ryan. Danny, I think I saw an email from you recently. Hopefully tomorrow I can get down to some business. I got a lot going on. And check your email out, see what's going on. Hey, Ted. The weather has changed for the worse here. I don't know if any of you guys got that cold front that came through. It's been rainy, and I actually had to put a jacket on today. What is that about? That's a good question, Sam. Somebody sent me an email with an update. They had tried it out. I hadn't got a chance to look at it yet. I did go out over the last weekend and play around with it some more. And basically found some interesting stuff as far as whenever the math is disabled or failed, the flow factor flatlines and just doesn't change even during transient modes anymore. So it's almost like it bypasses that parameter, and you see that the volumetric efficiency airflow lines up directly with dynamic airflow, which makes sense because mass airflow is no longer being calculated. Then if you go in and put it into basically what we call math tuning mode, which puts it in high speed all the time, you're still getting volumetric efficiency calculations in the background, which I talked about in that dynamic airflow video, which was to be expected. So Ted, just shoot me a one at the info at Goat Rope Garage, and I need to get on that. I will, I promise. My difference between Bank 1 and Bank 2 O2s have gotten worse. Now Bank 1 goes full lean at times, plus 24. Should I swap sensors? That would be the first thing I'd do. This easiest thing to do, Schmidhead. Swap the sensor, see if it's doing the same thing. If it's not, if the problem moves, obviously it's a bad O2 sensor. If the problem stays on that bank, you've got an exhaust leak. Jim White got a PB in the TBSS. One pass, all I got. 1241 at 107 on a terrible pass. Hey, Mike. Personal best on a terrible pass. So, hopefully you get out before the end of the season here. Get out again, Jim. Maybe get a good pass on if you're running 1241 on a terrible pass. You'd also smoke test it, as Jerry said. Schmidhead, that's what I did last time to find my exhaust leak. Jam a shop vac into the exhaust tailpipe with a rag to keep it from blowing out, and then spraying everything down with soapy water. Worked for me. I mean, I could actually hear it initially to know that I had an exhaust leak, and then use the soapy water to find out that one of my header flanges was not as flat as one would hope. I need a haircut. Sides are getting a little out of control. That's a pretty quick and easy test, as I said. If the leak is towards the engine bay, even with the shop vac running, you can generally hear it by sticking your head down by the exhaust manifolds. Did check the flanges for flatness. Something that everybody should do. If you're doing long tubes or something like that, check your header flanges. Drag strips aren't open until Thanksgiving? are open until Thanksgiving. I'm not sure when ours are shut down. Alex Young, 2015 6.2 centrifugal supercharger at part throttle. The truck is pulling a ton of power. Torque tuning. Yep, that's exactly what it is, Alex Young. Look at your commanded. You're probably seeing it shutting the throttle body. Learning to tune on cars. Just got an MPVI-II. Any info to use the software provided by HP tuners? Seth, I got so many videos out there, man. Just need to spend some time. And then going to be using laptop tune the Terminator. Yeah, I've got a couple on there. Check out Joe's website. You can find them in my, if you go to my YouTube homepage over at tuning101.com, I've got a link to Joe Simpson. He's got a lot of Holly stuff on there. Yeah, well, Johnny, whenever you're doing headers into an aluminum head, you got to remember that you're only using like 15 to 20 foot-pounds of torque on those, so they're not going to flatten out much. Jerry. Ben F. Hi, what's the leanest you feel comfortable running a Gen 5 LT4? Right now, I'd say 0.85. The direct injected motors, Ben, are a little bit less prone to cylinder detonation from lean, but that doesn't mean we go crazy. So I'd keep it at least 0.85, 12.5. Oh, yeah. Yep, that might have done it. Refresh my memory, please. 90% duty cycle on injectors. Tune required. Suggested. Good idea to be safe after installing new ones with data. Yes, Tommy, because the thing about it is even with the injector data in there, it's not going to be spot on. As I've talked in the past, that your fueling is more of the constant and your airflow is the variable. And so you need to go back through and check your MAF and VE tables to make sure that those values line up for the new constant data that you're putting in. So short of going from the same injectors, even if you went from the same injectors to the same injectors, there's always flow characteristic differences. There's no, even if they're matched injectors, it's going to be a little bit off. The data is a ballpark area to get them as close as possible, and then you correct the rest of it on the airflow side. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I know the Gen 5 LT4 is fairly rich from the factory, and I've not done anything on that front with mine yet. But I've been doing a lot of other stuff, and I actually got the Formula NOx sensor came in today, so I'm excited to hook that thing up and see how the factory NOx sensors read versus an aftermarket one. Should be interesting. Should be. It may not be, but it should be. I hope it is. I hope it's interesting. Driver side, upstream O2 reads all over the place. Should I put my wideband bung on the passenger side? Tried cleaning the O2 sensor, no luck. Ordered new ones. I mean, what do you mean by all over the place, Rick? Because that may be proper. Theoretically, whenever a car's running good, they should be reading all over the place. And then Jerry's also right. Generally cleaning those is not going to work. Can excessive vibration cause it to read stupid, lean, and switch sporadically? No, I don't think that would do it. I mean, theoretically, yeah, hitting the pipe with a hammer could damage the sensor. Johnny, not that I know of. Innate makes a combo that has a wideband, narrowband. Basically uses the wideband outputs narrowband, but I've not had any experience. 0.89, if you're running, well, depends. There's a lot going on there. I don't know if I'd run it that lean, even on a direct injected motor. I'd probably run it just a tad bit richer than that. E-fans are kicking in at 210 after a bigger aluminum radiator upgrade. Any ideas? You need to elaborate, SS. Are you wanting them to kick on sooner? Hey, Dan. Oh, you're saying it's running hotter with the bigger radiator. Yeah. I mean, I would be kicking my fans on sooner than 10.2. Or 210. 10.2. Can't talk. E38 ECU with capped injector size limit is the rescaling needed to make the bigger injector work correctly end up as accurate. Yes. What you're essentially doing, Ziggy, just like I talked about on just a bit ago with the fuel being a constant in the calculation, you're just changing the scaling on that, and you're making up for it on the airflow. But double check. I mean, I've got some videos out there on that, Ziggy, so watch them about all the other tables that you have to look at based on the air mass calculations that change whenever you adjust that. .87 on an LT1. I'd be fine with that naturally aspirated. Boosted though, you know, as I said, that would probably be the limit that I'd want to run boosted on a Gen 5 motor. Sounds good, Rick. Let us know what you find out. Robert says, question, what might be some ideas to make a mild cam run on a stock tune only for passing smog? Well, the thing about it is, Robert, I mean, are you in California? Like, it's the only place that you're going to need a stock tune. Even a properly tuned vehicle will pass smog, no problem. In fact, a properly tuned vehicle, if they're doing a tailpipe smog, will pass easier than a stock vehicle. Ah, you're in California. Okay. That's a tough one. Because the dynamics change based on the overlap, and that's your problem, is you've lost efficiency down low. I don't know that putting holes in the throttle body will necessarily make the thing run correctly. SS Research, jack the front end of that thing up. Make sure you don't have an air bubble trapped in there somewhere. What's going on with your fans, though? Why is your fan kicking on at 210? Did I miss this? Ugh. I'm sorry, Robert. I wish I had a better answer for you. How exactly does throttle scaler change air-fuel ratio? Cam 5.3 LS1 intake and Gen 4 truck throttle. Throttle scaler shouldn't change air-fuel ratio. It should change base airflow calculations. Effectively, it is, you know, the surface area of the throttle is going to be dependent on how the drive-by-wire works for idle and things like that. And if the throttle scaler is not set up, it's having a hard time making the adjustments it needs to hold an IPM. Yeah, SS, I would be looking into why that thing's not kicking on sooner than 210. I mean, you should be kicking that fan on, at least one fan on at like 170, 180. Well, if you're at 160, I mean, kick on a fan at 160 and the other one at 180. I know, Rick. I wish I had a better answer. Hey, Mike. I wish I had a better answer for that. Ugh. Yes, as Dave B1 said, the insides of a oxygen sensor have some components in there that are don't like shock. You know, Mike, I've gone back and looked at and tried to figure out a way to calculate something like that based off of mass airflow and dynamic airflow and volumetric air efficiency airflow to see what the split is. And honestly, I don't know if the data is coming in at a high enough resolution to do it. I'm going to keep on doing some digging on that. I will keep you posted because it'd be nice to be able to figure out which is having the most weight towards the dynamic airflow to be able to implement it on fourth gens and stuff like that. Brian, elaborate. Running down the road, AFR is 1.68-ish, but in the table it says negative 30-ish in green like it's super rich. Okay, so remember, Brian, in some situations, whenever something is too rich, it can cause a wideband to read lean. So, will permanent code clear over time if you set the SCS check to no report? No, it will not. A permanent code will only clear after a proper drive cycle, maybe more than one, with that code fixed. Once a permanent code is set, the only way to remove it is to fix the problem. That's why it's critical that you remove your rear O2 sensor codes before you put your long tubes on, because you'll never get rid of that code. But remember that permanent codes will not fail you on a check unless you're in California. They do not inhibit emissions readiness checks. Make a percentage change in your video and it'll go to 2AFR. Something's funky, Brian. You need to pull your wideband out and check it. Maybe do a free air calculation on it. Correct, Mike. Almost all of them, I mean, everything leans on the math more. Until you go into transient. That's when it's really using the volumetric efficiency. So you prefer serial or ProLink using the MPVI-II. Serials would be my first thing if you don't want to buy the ProLink. If you buy the ProLink and you have an AEM wideband, maybe use the CAN bus instead of analog. Analog's the last thing that I want to do to bring my wideband signal in. What permanent codes do you have that triple light? That's interesting. Why do certain tuners use a certain PE but dial in the math either rich or leaner than commanded? My first tuner had me command 0.86, but actually 0.8. Now with the new tuner, I'm still command 0.86, but running 0.89. That's an interesting question, Ben. So, you know, commanded is a multiplier off of your based airflow. The idea being that whenever you're not in power enrichment, you know, you should be hitting your stoic value. And then whenever you go into power enrichment, if everything is done right on your mass airflow and your volumetric efficiency tables, it should achieve whatever the commanded PE is. But we often achieve that by adjusting the mass airflow readings to always read what we're trying to read by using a wideband. You know, that's why we use the wideband on that stuff. Is my mom in here? I didn't see her. Effectively, it's hard to answer that question, Ben. I mean, one guy just tuned it rich, sent it down the road because rich is safe. It's easy and fast, quick way to get your money. This guy tuned it lean, probably kind of did the same thing. Ideally, if your commanded is at 0.86, it should be hitting 0.86 when you're in power enrichment. Yeah, Johnny, I think this week, you know, Rocky Mountain Race Week 2.0 was going on, and she was following along with that. And I don't know if you guys saw where the guy on the motorcycle wrecked 2 days ago in Stillwater by one of the checkpoints. They're actually friends with those people, and so she had gone over to the hospital with them and was hanging out with them. So I believe he's doing all right. He did have to have surgery. He broke his leg in a couple spots. In fact, he rear-ended his wife, who was racing a car, and he was racing a bike. And something happened. They were only doing like 30, and somebody like cut her off or something. She had slammed on the brakes, and he rear-ended her. Jonathan, the big thing about doing the CAN bus on the AEM stuff is that you have to add a resistor in there because there's no resistors. So try a 250 ohm resistor, I believe. Swapping a mechanical diesel into an 04 F-150, I'm planning on using HP tuners to disable cell features, but I was wondering, can HP tuner change crank signal from VR to Hall effect? No, Alex, because that signal is going to be hard-coded into the ECU, so it's not going to be something that you can change. Doing an LS swap, should I use HP tuners Terminator X Max? Also, obviously, but honestly, William, I would probably just go with the Terminator X Max. A lot easier. Less tables to deal with. Is CAN bus more reliable? There's no voltage skewing on it. You either have communications or you don't, so you don't have to worry about the analog signal dipping out. And so, once again, it's that mentality of whenever you're reading your wideband, you're taking an analog signal to your controller, which is often your gauge, converting it to digital, and then it stays digital all the way to the laptop if you're using CAN bus or serial, whereas if you're using analog, it has to go from analog to digital again. And in between all those changes, often the analog gets skewed a little bit, and so your readings don't always line up. Why do I get a P1514 code when doing speed density? Well, I'm going to have to look up what a P1514 code is. Oh, it's mass airflow performance. It's because you failed the mass airflow. That's all it is. That's interesting, though, that you get a P1514. Flying wrench, what are you tuning it on? Jonathan, remind me, and I will look up the size resistor that you need. Maybe it's a 120, around a 120. I can't remember. I just did it on the Corvette the other day. Yeah, what generation are you on, Jonathan? Are you on a third generation, fourth generation? That's going to be the question. Better resolution on the Max. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the platform. But yeah, generally it's going to be better resolution on the Mac. It's just easier. It's easier. Trust me. It's easier. How much do you have to change after you stroke to a 6.2? Your displacement. Then you just need to go in and do proper tuning after that. But the big thing is change your displacement because that's going to affect your airflow calculations and your cylinder air mass calculations. No, not you, Jonathan. I know what you got. I'm talking about Flying Wrench in his question with the P1514 code, whether or not it's a mass airflow sensor or a TAC controller, because it could be a TAC controller also, which should not be, I mean, it should be a mass airflow sensor error. Gen 3, yeah. Schmidhead, I'm not sure. That's a good question. It may not be present on earlier stuff. It just may not be a parameter that's present before then. And as I said, that's why I've been trying to dig through some data and figure out how to use the 3 airflow modes to do a general calculation of which one's in control more, which would be ideal anyways. But I think it's going to boil down to taking the data and pulling that specific data as fast as possible. So let's open up the tune window here and take a look. Flying Rich Garage, just re-enable your math real quick and see if it fixes it. Let's see here, 2009 Cadillac. So on 2009 Cadillac, we've got mass airflow, dynamic airflow, and volumetric efficiency airflow. And so what I'm thinking is that, let's see, polling intervals at 5 hertz. I wonder, I need to do some logging at like the 100 hertz rate for those 3 parameters, so the data is updating faster on those 3 parameters, and see if then you can do some math. Can you move the pressure ratio sensor location without tuning anything? Samantha, are you talking about your barometric one or your manifold air pressure? Theoretically, yeah, you should be able to move it without having to retune. Which link was it, Schmidhead? You posted it in our forums? You're not talking about Numbnuts' GMVE link, are you? Because I'm not going to go around in circles with that guy anymore. Okay, let me look at that. Yeah, but this doesn't work. Ask me how I know. This doesn't work, Schmidhead. I did a video on this using a lot of this stuff, and the problem is that there's a constant in here that is not the same from vehicle to vehicle. It sort of works. It sort of works. I will say this: it can be made to work. It is not reliable, though. So this is, I mean, if you go back, 2 years ago, I did a video on populating a volumetric efficiency table using the manifold mass airflow sensor, and it worked. I was able to basically zero out the VE table and then populate values and build a VE table from scratch using a lot of this math and stuff like that. But there is a weird constant that you have to figure out in order to get it to populate the data properly, and it was a pain. So, but as said, yeah, it's not worth messing with. Yeah, Samantha, that's fine. It's not going to mess anything up on pressure ratio if it's just the barometric. What up, JC? Corey Grove. You got a misfire that's not showing any misfire in HP tuners, and you did the crank relearn, right? I believe we've talked about this. Jonathan Blunt, you will add a new parameter if you go into your add channels list. Come over here. It'll be this one right here underneath AEM Wago. It'll be that one right there. These are your CAN bus parameters. There you go. Dan Gerber's got you, Corey. Injectors would be the next thing to check. Check your resistance on your injectors. Make sure all the resistance lines up. Should be, what, 12 to 16 ohms, somewhere around there, and all of them should have the same resistance. Fairly close resistance. But the fact, if it was an injector or something like that, it should be reading misfires. The fact you're not reading misfires is what's really weird. You know, Corey literally unplugged one of his spark plugs, and it did not register misfires on there. And you've already and you replaced the crank sensor? TR55 at 50 foot for stock LS. Elaborate, Samantha. Yeah, replace it. You should be getting misfires whenever you're doing that. Nope, no other math put in that parameter, Jonathan. It'll read right in. SB, you don't need to do anything on the torque tables for the Gen 4s. Gen 4s aren't torque based like the Gen 5s. There's some torque stuff that happened, but it's not going to affect whether or not you're making power on that platform. So just ignore them. A lot of good questions tonight. I mean, we get good questions every week. It's in the manual, Jonathan. Let me open it up real quick. It specifically talks about how there's no built-in resistance on that setup. CAN bus, where is the CAN bus? 120, yep. Maybe 60? Try a 60 ohm first. It doesn't matter, they're all the same. Try 60 ohm first, and if a 60 ohm doesn't work, go to 120. So just buy you a big handful of resistors. Sorry, let me explain. You said that on Gen 3 you can increase torque. You said the torque thief. Gen 4 is all an individual gear. I'm not sure what you're talking about, SB. Good luck with the dry kit. No, go wet. Go wet. Go wet, Ziggy, if you're doing a factory ECU. Because you don't have, it's unless you're planning on spraying all the time. Bucking it idle and torque smoothing is on. Pretty sure you covered this in another video. I can't find it. Jonathan, make sure your base airflow, idle airflow is looking good, because if the base idle airflow is not looking good, your timing overcompensates. Gen 3, man. Okay, hold on, SB. You're dredging up stuff that is so old I can't remember in my wizened age. Let me look and see what you're talking about before we wrap up tonight, because I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction. Chris Hardy, there is a table in there for whenever things like AC and fans kick on, how much airflow to add. You need to look at that and dial it back. Oh, okay. SB, that's just your standard torque management. Hold on a second here. Let me just make this easy, and I'm just going to open this up, and we're just going to look at this. Let me find a 3rd gen. No, no, I'm talking about virtual torque and oh, thanks, Dave. B10 or B1. Hopefully the nitrous purge is set up. Yeah, it's for torque management and virtual torque, two separate things. So here, so what we're looking at here, let me go, is the maximum torque tables here underneath RPM versus gear. These things just, in fact, this one is above the limit, which is very interesting. 640 should be the limit, but these are set to 1280. Surprised. Where did I get this tune? Who knows? But max those out. Just max them out. That's all that matters. Let's look at a 2001 Pontiac Firebird. 640. Yep. Gen 4s is completely different. You don't see RPM versus gear. Correct. So let's look at Gen 4. And here we'll do an E67. So you got an RPM versus gear on a 640 on a E67. Let's look at E38. Do I have an E38? Do a late E38. RPM versus gears here. Same ordeal. You just max it out. Which fourth gen are you working on? Is there one that doesn't have that? E40 maybe? No, that's got the RPM versus gear table. I think all of them do, SB. Oh yeah, Jose, I will do that before we get off here. So Jose was wanting to hear, even in the basic view, Jose was wanting to hear about neural network trainer and how it works. And so, Alex Young, thank you also for the tip. E78 on a Gen 4 hybrid, Samantha, that's a good question. I need to actually look at one of those. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Samantha, email me at info@GoatRope about the E78 ECM if you would, and I will look into those. I need to see what's going on with those. Okay, let's talk about neural networking. Unfortunately, I don't have my dongle hooked up, so I can't open up a neural network enabled GM file because you can't without connecting up to those. So the way this works is on these new platforms, 2019 plus, whenever you're talking about like an E90 ECU, stuff like this, they use neural networking. And so it's not like your typical stuff where we have a volumetric efficiency table and a dynamic or a mass air. We still have a mass airflow table, but you don't have a volumetric efficiency table. And what it does is uses neural network. And how the basis of how this thing works is GM trains a neural network. They take a lot of known good data for that platform and they put it through a computer and it looks at all of the different data points and says, okay, this is what we're looking for to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, aka good air-fuel ratio, good timing control, good power, all that stuff. And in order to do that, all of these things need to be within this realm. And if something skews out on your output, say your AFR starts going off, it tracks back through the neural network and says, okay, the things that are affecting AFR are airflow and fuel. And so based on how this is moving, we're going to make small adjustments to airflow and fuel until it starts moving back in the correct direction of where we want it to. And that's the way that it learns. It's closed loop on crack. Yeah, SB, exactly. Max out those values. So it tracks in and it does this with quite a few different sensors based on how many layers are in there. So what happens is whenever we do something that does a lot of changes as far as like forced induction in the case of Jose's setup, we are now creating data that's being inputted that's with outside of the sanity range of the neural network, and so it doesn't know what to do. So suddenly we have a bunch more airflow, And normally on the output, it's showing that we're going lean, and it would try and add fuel and stuff like that, but it has limits on what it's allowed to do. And so we get outside of that range of what it's capable of doing. So what we have to do is train the new neural network, and we set up tables, much like everything else, where we have error tables. We log the data, we see where the error is at, and we apply it to a table that's matched up. I've got a video on this that goes over some of it. So go check out the neural networking tool video. And we then upload it to HP tuners. They process it through a computer, and essentially what they're doing is retraining a new neural network. So imagine if you had a camera that's set up with artificial intelligence and a neural network to spot every car that's black. And so it has to learn what a black car looks like. We feed it a lot of data that shows this is what a black car looks like, match other cars that fit these parameters. Well, then a month later, we decide that we want to match every car that's white. Instead, we've got to retrain that neural network to look for white cars instead of black cars at this point in time. That's essentially what we're doing whenever we retrain these neural networks, is we're saying, hey, we're looking for this range of airflow as opposed to this range of airflow, or maybe this, range of fuel adjustment and correction as opposed to this range of fuel adjustment. And so we are telling it to expect different inputs in order to get different outputs, but that whole neural network itself has to be retrained in order to make that data make sense. So that's kind of what's going on there. Sorry, PNW. Spinfected, have you done a lot of 10-speed tuning? No. I don't know that I've really done, I mean, I've looked at some 10-speed stuff like that. What you're wanting to do is got shift speeds, torque management in between shifts. So, looks like the ability is, the ability is there. Just be careful about torque management and removing too much torque management in between shifts, because that's how you smoke transmissions. You can speed up the shift speed. You're going to get to a point where you get diminishing results. Speeding it up is not going to cause it to shift any faster, because it physically is shifting and it can only shift so fast. So keep that in mind. You say there isn't tables. Really? What are you on? 6-gen Camaro trans. This is probably, no, that's a manual. I don't know if I have a 6-speed to look at. No, this is going to be an 8-speed. Make sure that you're viewing it in advanced mode. So you can see here, this is out of the Z06. There's no shift speed on there. Make sure that you go up to edit, change your view over to advanced. Reopen your parameter window. Now you should have shift timing. Because my guess is that's all that's happening. Spin. Well, PNW, I only tune so many cars at once, because whenever I tune, it takes a long time. I spend a lot of time on my tunes. Months in some cases. So I'm very, very particular about my tunes, and that's why I don't have that many that I do, because I all the time that I spend with my customers. So Spin, I'll look at some 10-speed files and see if I can figure out. Yes, the problem with OCD, and I tune every car as if it were my own, at the end of the day. Like, whenever I say that you're getting a custom tune, you're literally getting a custom tune as if I own the car. So, it is 8:45. Yeah, exactly, Rick. You guys are keeping me busy. You about got me back to an hour already. It is 8:45. It is my bedtime. Listen, everybody, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. As always, for a Thursday night. Yes, Maxi Skier to 6042. You guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. ABT. Always be tuning. Ah, you guys are the best.